Hey, Tim.
Caitlin, hi.
Long time no podcast.
Yeah.
That's a bit unusual, hey?
We haven't tried one of these since, I don't know, like at least a year or two. Since COVID was the last one we actually ran.
Yeah, I think we thought, well, we had in our head that we would be spending a lot of time inside and have a lot of actual time to do things.
Then we remembered that our job was completely unchanged.
Yeah.
And we were just as busy as ever.
And just as stressed out and traumatized as everyone else too.
Yeah.
So like, it was a full-on time for everyone. So not really the moment that you need to be starting new projects.
Yeah.
But, that has been our podcast journey, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And that might be this one too. I don't want to, raise any hopes like this,
Yeah, this one could totally faceplant as well. Or maybe we'll just have fun for one time and then never do it again for another 6 years or whatever.
So sorry to disappoint preemptively.
Or maybe it'll become a thing. Who knows?
Anyway, yeah. So,
Caitlin, how have your last 4 months been?
oh, God. 4 months. 4 months, that would be, tracking back to October 7.
Thereabouts, yeah.
Right. Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, it's just been one long scroll of death and destruction and just trying to take in the enormity of what is occurring in our name.
Yeah.
With our tax dollars.
It's been so bad. It's been so awful. Like I normally love our project that we work on.
Yeah, same. But it's been really stressful, hasn't it?
I've never enjoyed it less than I have these last 4 months.
Yeah, trying to keep on top of what is really just the most heinous ongoing war crime.
Yeah. Do you remember at the beginning in the first few weeks or first couple of months or whatever where we were starting to get that sort of Tetris effect when we closed our eyes, only instead of Tetris blocks it was
we could see the
dead kids. We were both getting that.
Dismembered,
That was just this is just our job.
Yeah.
And now we're not seeing it as much because they've succeeded in cutting off a lot of the internet and hiding a lot of it and everything.
And murdering a lot of journalists.
Yeah, they've murdered so many journalists.
And,
or driven them out.
Right.
Yeah. A couple of them ran for their own safety.
Yeah, like Motaz and Wael.
Yeah.
Bazan is still in there.
Yeah.
I mean, and
that poor girl.
Yeah.
How old is she? She's
23 or 4 or something.
Oh, God.
Not even. She opens every segment with, "Hi, it's Bazan, and I'm still alive." And it is like hearing your kid come through the door on a Saturday night, like just the relief of okay.
What a horrible thing for a journalist to have to say every day.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing. She wasn't a journalist per se when this all started. She was
like an influencer, huh?
Yeah, just an Instagram chick who did these awesome little lifestyle pieces on what it was like to live where she lived.
Yeah, you showed me clips of her before that.
Yeah.
She was just pretty, full of light.
Yeah. So bouncy and optimistic and just gorgeous. But,
Looks just so harrowed now. She's seen such horrors.
She has. It has been to our benefit that she has shown what she has seen too, and that we've had, just a kind of taster of what they're going through on a daily basis.
Yeah. And it ain't just the Gazans who've been filming the horrors happening in Gaza.
No, I mean, that's actually probably the worst footage. It often is from IDF soldiers themselves.
Just giving thumbs up with something horrible happening in the background.
Right, yeah. And today we found out that the Telegram channel that was, basically feeding out all those, virtually snuff videos.
Literally snuff videos. That's the thing that's, I'm sure a lot of the people watching it were not at all, didn't give a fuck about Israel, Gaza at all. They were just people who like to see people getting killed.
Oh, God. Yeah, well, yeah, was run by the IDF. Some of the worst footage, the most up close, footage of like soldiers bulldozing people and doing all sorts of things.
The gorier, the better for them, really. They like people would, and a lot of Israelis. A lot of Israelis loved watching this. They loved watching Palestinian people die horribly.
This has been what's really fascinating to me is how a whole population can be paced into cheering for genocide. I saw a little video on Instagram yesterday of this well-to-do looking older lady, probably in her 60s, Israeli woman, protesting the aid going into Gaza, doing sit-ins and protests and stuff like that, using the language of protest, using the language of, this has to stop. This is so unfair. We cannot be feeding our enemies. We cannot be giving succor to our enemies.
Well, and is this one of the ones that they're not just actually protesting, they're actually blockading?
Yeah, blockading the aid going in. So
not really any different from U.S. and Saudi warships stopping food from getting into Yemen a few years ago.
Right, yeah, no, yeah, just, yeah, and fully thinking that she was absolutely correct in that.
Yeah, no, these children should obviously starve.
Yeah, so there's no reaching someone when they've reached that level of brainwashing. That's kind of, there's no amount of dead babies you can show her without her thinking, well, good.
Right.
That's a terrorist baby or whatever the fuck that.
Right, yeah. And I like that lack of empathy probably wouldn't have been possible if it hadn't, like, even before October 7th, if there hadn't been this kind of primer coating put down of the sort of indoctrination that makes an apartheid state that keeps 2 million people in a giant concentration camp, that legitimizes that idea, that legitimizes such a tyrannical and abusive system.
Right.
Israelis have been, they grow up in that.
Right.
The Jewish diaspora gets indoctrinated with a good chunk of it, not nearly as much, but Israelis especially, like they just grow up saturated in it.
Right, yeah. To the point where they just think that, a lot of them think the baby's not going hard enough. Despite being held up by the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, for potentially committing genocide.
Yeah.
So, and none of that is kind of reached in and shook them awake.
No, they're just sort of like either, no, that's not what this is. If they're a little more on the left, they're just sort of like, no, we were defending ourselves or whatever. And if they're a little more on the right, they're just like, yeah, we're genociding them. Hell yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that has been the most eye-opening thing, being online all the time and, putting out tweets and things like that. And then the comments that we get back are just insane. People are going, you'll be talking about children dying and they're like, well, fuck around and find out. This is the find out part.
To a kid, about a child, about a dead, it's like you're standing over a pile of dead children and doing like tough guy posturing. Fuck around and find out, kid.
Yeah.
It's
so
it's
fucking
about as
gross,
evil
man.
as you can imagine.
It's so fucking gross.
I don't know. This whole thing has been very educational for me. Like, I knew the Israeli government was horrible, and I knew, a lot of the political factions were really bad, but I didn't really know just how gross Israelis and Israel supporters outside of Israel could be about all this. Like, I didn't know they would be so openly disgusting.
And the other thing that keeps happening is that I'll come across something and think, oh, that's too horrific. Like that can't be real. That can't be real. That's AI or that's,
That's just some hoax. That's some sort of...
They're framing that in a really...
Yeah, because we've seen that happen.
Hyperbolic way.
Right.
Yeah.
That just happened a lot of times with like Syria or Ukraine or whatever. It's like,
you got to be careful.
Yeah, so there's some clickbait guy trying to capitalize on the moment and get a lot of clicks. But then that is exactly what happened. Yeah. Oh, no. The IDF really is just...
Snuff films or like, it's...
Over and over and over again that's been happening. We're like, all right, that's obviously bullshit. Oh, Jesus Christ. And it still happens. Like, even after how many times we've seen this, it's still like, that can't be real. No. Nah, that's real. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like the Telegram thing about the snuff films. That was the last time it happened to me. That was about 18 hours ago. And the other thing is just, it's been a kind of like like a guidebook for propaganda and how ham-fisted you can be about lying as long as you just continue to lie. And then once you've lied for long enough and established that as a norm, then you can backtrack and say, oh, yeah, well, we did actually do that. But the norm stands. And I'm talking about Al-Shifa Hospital.
Right. Or the one before it, the first hospital they went after, that Baptist hospital where there was an explosion. They were like, we would never bomb a hospital.
Right.
There's no functioning hospitals anymore because they've all been bombed.
Right, yeah. But we debated for weeks online about Al-Shifa particularly, I remember.
Is it Hamas, whatever thing? And then
also the rockets fire.
Then it turned out it wasn't at all. Like the Washington Post did a whole thing on it. It wasn't. And they're still attacking hospitals, and there's no functioning healthcare system in Gaza anymore.
Yeah, we don't talk about hospitals anymore. We don't talk about the legitimacy of bombing hospitals because that was established as a norm. And I think this is actually kind of scary for the rest of, warfare. Like,
right.
Are we going to get to the point where that is just a norm all over the world? Like, real honestly.
If the U.S. goes and bombs a hospital, we've kind of already established that that's fine and normal to do.
Right.
Because Israel did it.
Yeah.
They just started attacking these hospitals, and then it was just deny, lie. And then you find out weeks or months later, okay, that was all a lie. And
in the meantime,
it already happened, so that's normal. So you should stop being shocked about that. That's just the way the world is.
Right. Exactly.
Now.
Yeah. And then they dig into our preemptive disappointment, our learned helplessness. Oh, well, that's just the way it is. It's just the way it is, which is, death to any kind of protest movement if people are just preemptively disappointed. And, I'm not shocked. Those sorts of things that particularly leftists lean on to feel intellectually superior, but actually really harm our agenda in trying to enforce norms and social mores and morals and ethics and stuff and try to make a better world, because we're kind of backtracking all the time going, I knew that. I'd rather know that than actually change things by, acting shocked.
Right.
And
there's
saying that's wrong.
There's this weird taboo about publicly acknowledging that you're surprised and being shocked.
Yeah.
You just have to sort of be smugly knowing better and just sort of.
Well, of course that happens. Yeah. Of course Israel did that.
Yeah, and
that actually doesn't help anyone, mate.
No, it really.
I mean, yes, you win that. You win that little exchange. You look cool for a bit.
You get to look like the one who knew better.
Yeah.
But first of all, it is shocking. Like, if you're in touch with your humanity and your emotions and your empathy, you have a functioning empathy center, it's going to shock you. And it should shock you. And you should let it shock you. You should never let yourself get desensitized to that. Never let them take that away from you. And also, you're just harming the impact. You're diminishing the impact of the thing that just happened.
Right, yes. Because it is the shock of things that will change stuff.
That's what snaps people's eyes open. Oh!
Yeah.
That's just the way the world is?
Shoveling sleeping sand all over the thing and causing inertia. Like, you're an idiot if you were shocked by that.
Yeah.
No, you're not. You're fucking a normal person.
Or like the Iraq WMD thing that snapped so many people's eyes open and created so many anti-war activists. You have to have, it has to actually astonish you that your government did that and lied about it, and the media helped them. And you want people to really absorb that. You want people to really. It's important that people really grok what's in front of them.
Right.
Really get it.
In that moment too. Like, not later, not, I had to think about that, and that was actually quite shocking. That doesn't help.
Yeah, and that it's important for people to get that, for that shockwave to ripple through at its maximum effect, because Israel and its apologists and defenders spend so much energy trying to mitigate that initial shock.
That's exactly what they're doing. They're mitigating it. That's so true. And because that first shock will give you the no.
Right.
No.
They're trying to dampen that no.
Yeah.
Like the guy who the IDF guys who sniped that dude with the camera in front of that Western press.
Yeah, right.
There's a Western journalist filming, and the IDF sniped a Palestinian who was holding a white flag right in front of the camera. Right in front of the camera.
They had literally just been doing an interview with this guy. I think it was ITV. They were talking to him. The guy and his little posse explained, that they had to get to the other side to get to their family, and they were going to take this white flag, and they were scared for their lives, and but that they needed to get to just across this street, and right in front of their eyes he got killed.
Yeah, the camera was facing him when it happened and stuff. This has been happening a lot, but this is the first time it happened in front of a Western video camera,
right?
News camera. And the IDF denied it. They were like, when ITV published it, there was a segment missing.
Just
after the gunshot.
Maybe it was a few seconds, 2 or 3 seconds.
It was like I think it was a little longer than that. I think it was like 10 or 12 seconds, it was enough for the cameraman to run for his own safety because he was worried he was going to get shot.
Right.
And then turn back and face the person lying on the ground. And ITV, I guess this was directly from their news broadcast where they have to edit everything for time and stuff, and all that. The camera jiggling and stuff didn't make for good television, so they snipped it out. So the IDF was like, this has clearly been edited.
Well, yeah.
And they knew that the footage was out there. They know ITV News isn't going to just lie about what their own footage contains, but and that the truth would come out a few days later, but that doesn't matter if it comes out a few days later. What matters is that initial impact.
Right, is mitigated by them throwing some sort of doubt onto it. And it's like, are you really looking at do you really know what you're looking at?
It dampens the reverberations, like how sound studios have the foam on the walls to dampen it just soaks it up. That's their whole job, is to just dampen the sound.
Right, and then continue marching forward.
Yeah. And then the next time you see a Palestinian shot while carrying a white flag, it's not going to have the initial impact because we found out later that that's just normal and that's what always happens.
Right. So, yeah, that's really been our job for 4 months, I think, encapsulated, is making sure that people are really seeing this and taking it in and not dissociating, not compartmentalizing, not making it into something else, not relaxing into a know-it-all sort of posture.
Not letting it become normalized.
And not letting it become normalized, because if we let it become normalized, that will be our normal.
Yeah, it needs to be. We need to keep pointing out, no, this is freakish. This is profoundly unhealthy.
Yeah.
Allowing this to become normal is just like allowing cancer cells to become normal. It's like
exactly.
allowing a grave illness to just go, oh, yeah, well, it's just supposed to be like that.
Right, yeah. That's where I really think art and stuff like that can really help as well. And I've seen that kind of artists have stepped up about this.
Oh, they've been so great.
Yeah, so many different types of graphics and, paintings and songs, and we've been doing some poetry because if you come at it from a creative artistic angle, you can really capture some of the raw emotion of the horror and the terrifying circumstances these people are in, and just the shock of seeing how wicked we can be.
Yeah, it's like our emotional bodies have kind of a more, in a weird way, we have a more rational response to what we're seeing emotionally than we do intellectually.
Right, yeah.
If we intellectualize what we're seeing, it can actually really minimize the reality and the urgency of what needs to happen.
Right. And that feeling of, ceasefire now, that everyone just wants this to fucking stop. Just stop. And it hasn't. It seems like it's ramping up.
No, they're
bombing in Rafah.
They're looking us right in the eye.
Yeah,
it's like it's like someone's being stabbed to death in the town square, and everyone's looking at him, and he's just looking around at everyone and just plunging the knife in again and again.
Right, and daring us to do something.
Yeah, and not just Israel. The most powerful governments in the world are doing this.
Absolutely, and that has been so shocking as an Australian too. Frickin' Anthony Anthony Albanese. He used to attend pro-Palestine protests, and there's footage of him making these rousing speeches about the Palestinian cause. He's our Prime Minister, and he has what a soft cock.
Yeah.
What a fucking wuss bag soft cock. I am just so disgusted by him. He is such a wuss. And Penny Wong, another woman who has talked all the talk. She will not walk the walk, and she's been so insidious about the way that she's kind of reworded and reframed everything so that within the language of leftism,
right,
so that it sounds kind of halfway reasonable, when what she's talking about is just an ongoing fucking genocide. Penny, stop.
Yeah, and that's the job of the Australian Labor Party, really, is to put a friendly face on the malfeasance and atrocities of the empire.
Right.
Just like the Democratic Party, just like the UK Labor Party. That's their whole function, is to put a humanitarian, sensible, adults in the room face on this murderous and tyrannical, the most murderous and tyrannical power structure on the planet.
Well, see, and small mercies. It is fantastic that the Democrats, both the Democrats and in Australia, the Labor Party, the so-called left party, and in Canada, Trudeau.
Oh God.
Yeah. Have to be the face of this, and have to just show us who they are. See, if they were the right-wing party, there'd be just this massive rage against them. We wouldn't really be seeing how the two fists of the empire work. That the jab setting you up and then the cross.
Right, yeah. Right. It's exposing the empire more than anything, really, and because of that. Just the fact that Biden is doing things that are much worse than anything Trump has done, quantifiably.
Right. He's completely blown Trump away,
right, yeah,
in terms of
And you could already arguably make that case with the nuclear brinkmanship with Ukraine, but now he's backing an active genocide and just telling reporters, yeah, no, it's going to keep happening. We're not going to stop.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Just really blatantly just slamming the brakes on any possibility of bringing some humanness to the situation and trying to work for peace. He's been bombing 3 countries in facilitation of it.
Right, yeah.
He's been bombing Iraq and Syria and Yemen to help it continue.
While having all the power in that too.
Yeah, and while pouring weapons into that genocide.
Yeah, there's really, being able to do whatever the fuck he liked, actually. He could stop this genocide today. He could stop all of this just by saying, well, we won't supply weapons to it. We won't supply money.
Yeah.
And then Israel would have to back off, and that would be the end of that.
Yeah, the Israelis fully acknowledge that this would be impossible without the U.S. They would have to stop.
Right, yeah.
And instead they're getting 50 jet planes, fighter jets, and 12 Apache helicopters.
Yeah.
They're getting ready to send that over there. It's just that those will be used to murder children.
Yeah.
Or to start a war with Lebanon.
Right, yeah. But what makes me optimistic, Timothy, is that we have been doing this for 7 years now, and never, ever, ever have we been remotely mainstream. We've been very fringe characters, haven't we? And always kind of punching from the very outer rim of the narrative matrix. That's why we called it Notes from the Edge of the Narrative Matrix. And now I find myself in the situation where I'm talking to my kids and my kids' friends, and they're all on board and they see it so clearly. They see every part of it, which was fascinating to me because, we have really struggled to kind of show all the outlines of how the empire works and whether there is even an empire,
right.
that has been in dispute, that there is this kind of rough coalition of Western countries and corporations, etc., that kind of coalesce. I think at one point we were using the word the blob, the Western Empire blob, to shore up areas of geostrategic influence and keep the resources flowing. And just this Israel thing really snaps some eyes open to how it operates.
Yeah, because it's so blatant. Everything else you could put spin on. With Syria, they could just sort of hide the fact that they were pouring all these weapons into extremist factions with the goal of toppling Damascus. With Libya, they could disguise it as a humanitarian intervention. With Ukraine, you could call it a unprovoked invasion by Putin, and the U.S. was just standing there minding its own business. NATO didn't do anything.
Twiddling its thumbs.
They're just murdering kids and making snuff films out of it.
Right, yeah. It really is just like in your fucking face. But it is also showing up all the different parts of it. Like I'm reminded of, that dye they put in your body when they're trying to show up the cancer.
Like barium.
Yeah, because
it's really spotlighted it.
Yeah, including all the elements of countries like Australia that appear to be these kind of benign sort of
independent, sovereign, just separate countries over there, minding their own business, doing their own things.
Right, yeah, having their own thoughts and feelings about things.
Right. No, and it's just sort of switched off all the lights on all the other countries, and it's brought the lights of these other countries just right to the forefront, and it's just sort of spotlighted the whole. So here's the empire. Here's what it works. Here's where its member states are. Here's what they do.
Yeah, and here's how they do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's been really wonderful. Actually, we've been waiting for something like this for a long, long time.
Yeah. Oh man, if this was happening minus all the dead children and massacred civilians, it would be just wonderful and worthy of celebration.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah,
instead of the dim silver lining on the most horrific thing we've ever witnessed.
Right? Yeah. That's not funny, Tim.
All you can do is laugh sometimes.
I know. Well, yeah, it's a coping mechanism. So you have some questions.
Oh yeah, we got questions. We asked before we did this podcast. We asked Twitter for some questions,
and so I had to read through them, but you've chosen them. So
yeah. The first one I chose by Lark002 is who is Tim?
Not Tim Pool.
No, not Tim. Not Tim Pool. Some people thought when you said you're going to do a podcast with Tim, they thought, oh no, the beanie guy.
Yeah, that's right. Or Tim Dillon was another one I saw people thought.
I didn't realize there were
multiple Tims.
Yeah,
turns out. Yeah. So Tim, who are you, Tim?
Okay, yeah, I'm Caitlin's husband and co-writer, and I'm the American voice that you hear doing the readings of the articles. I'm just the other half of the project. We're in a constant state of collaboration, and I'm pretty much involved in everything that we're putting out there.
Right. It's my name, but it's really both of us, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just you need to pick a name for you to have.
I mean, yeah.
But yeah, I'm from the U.S. I came here to marry Caitlin. We're both divorcees. We met each other on a spirituality forum years and years ago. And I came over here in 2016 and we got hitched, and then this weird project of ours erupted the next year. And
I had a journalism degree, and mainly this came from Facebook posts.
Yeah, you'd been writing really enthusiastically about the Bernie Sanders campaign back when we still believed in that.
Yeah.
And people started paying attention. That was in 2016, and then we went crowdfunded in 2017 and started making U.S. foreign policy and criticism of the empire kind of our thing, and we've been sort of writing about that pretty much every day since then. So basically what happens is we just have these conversations about what we're seeing and what it's like, and then ideas come out, and that turns into ideas for articles, and we get headlines, and yeah.
But it's really just a part of our conversation about things. I mean, really, we're kind of obsessed about this, aren't we? Anyway.
Yeah, it was. Caitlin's a mother, so we have a real investment in the future of our species.
Well, and I think I can track my beginning back to a conversation I had with my kids who were both very worried about the future. And I found myself saying, don't worry, look, we fucked this up. I've got this. I'll fix it. Don't worry about it. Just let it, Let me handle it.
Imagine if all...
So I thought, and then I went away and thought, I better handle it.
No, but imagine if all the older generations did that. Imagine if everyone from our generation and older generations did that and said, I take responsibility for this. It's my job to fix it. Instead of just like, you young kids are fuck ups and you use pronouns wrong and spend too much time on TikTok or whatever.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, I do feel like the generation I'm from, Gen X, really fucking fluffed it. Like, we were handed the torch by the boomers, and then we kind of like stood around and lit our cigarettes off.
Decided, let's make apathy cool. Let's make the coolest thing you can possibly do to not care about anything.
Oh, well, whatever, never mind. That was the rallying cry of my generation.
Yeah.
And then you're a bit younger.
Yeah, I'm a millennial technically, and we weren't any better, really.
Well, I mean, I think you guys, because we fucked it so bad, and then you had no money and no prospects, and so you started thinking, this is maybe what we're being sold on the packet here is, the ingredients aren't actually in what we're eating. Like, I think in terms of democracy and stuff like that, Millennium started to question that. I mean, I think Bernie Sanders was...
that was a millennial-driven thing. And
for sure.
So I guess there has been a bit of a stirring on my part of it. But the Gen Z people, really, if you compare what millennials have done to what Gen Z has been doing for Palestine these last 4 months, what a pleasant surprise that has been. It's just been this explosion of health. From this younger generation, everyone's been shitting on for years. And what have you guys been talking about on your little phones over there?
In your Discord servers, and
you've been doing so much better than us.
And I do think that they've kind of formed their own sort of like culture outside of like, television and all these kind of centralized forces of culture that I grew up with television, and then, you grew up with the internet, but not really.
No, not really. And not with like social media being a part of the life breath of my childhood or anything.
Right, yeah. These kids have been able to just kind of talk things through, make mistakes, course correct,
But they've been the first generation ever in human history to create their own culture. Like they're the first generation ever that would rather watch that, and that has the technological ability to watch someone their own age talking to a camera, than some comedy show that was written by people 3 times older than them.
Right, yeah. And and that they've been talking through these things completely outside of the normal structures, outside of the gatekeeping communities of Hollywood and
and the news media and everything. And it turns out that it's yielded some really great stuff.
Yeah.
There's some like really anti-capitalist sentiment, anti-imperialist sentiment that just came out of fucking nowhere because it wasn't being adequately policed by the propaganda services of the empire.
Right, yeah. And because they talking to each other all the time, they have this unity, this kind of force of like of many. So there's really not a lot you can do to fuck with their minds about it. Like, they've made their minds up collectively about this.
And they've decided that we don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
And they're correct.
Yeah.
Like,
we were the ones who ruined it, so it's like...
Yeah.
Well, fuck off then.
You had
get
your chance. Go away.
We're going to do our own thing. The gender thing, we're changing that. Doing stuff differently. We're not going to get drafted in the army. We're not signing up. We're not enlisting for the army no more. That's not happening anymore.
That was a bit of a shock.
We're not going to work shit jobs no more. We'll just quit.
Oh, I love how they do that.
Yeah. What the fuck? You just like, we're never going to own our own homes anyway. We'll just live with our parents.
Yeah. And they've really shaken things up a bit. And I'm here for it.
Should I do another question?
Yes, please.
Joss Asselbergs says, do you guys ever disagree on the topics you cover?
Oh, yeah. Not really.
No.
We kind of
Well, like Caitlin's in charge. That's
yeah.
so that's why it's in Caitlin's name.
Do not question me.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, I just like Caitlin's really.
I don't like how that sounds.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not okay. Let me rephrase it. Caitlin is our moral compass. I feel like Caitlin has more wisdom and more of a better understanding, and that's why this whole thing is in her name, and why she has full editorial control of everything. Is I just sort of really trust Caitlin. I feel like if someone offered to hand the keys of the world, the steering wheel of the world, to one person, I would say, yeah, give it to Caitlin. The world will be the world will be a lot better. No, I will. You just
thank you though.
I know you would refuse, and that's why it would have to go to you. You're the sort of person who would reject it. But just Caitlin is the wisest and best person I know. Just everything she does is sort of born of this goodwill toward
Jesus
humanity.
Christ, Tim.
Just let me say my thing, man.
Okay.
So I just sort of, if I feel any sort of objection, like I used to be a libertarian back in the day, and back when I was a Catholic, I was trying to find some way for socialism to not be the only possible solution to humanity's problems. So I don't necessarily have the best take on things, and Caitlin is. And just by having these conversations and stuff, Caitlin has really shown me things. And if I feel like I'm not seeing something that Caitlin is seeing, I just ask her what she's seeing, and I eventually figure it out. I'm like, all right, yeah, okay. I guess libertarian does not have any answer for ecocide or for caring for the needful or anything like that. And capitalism does have to go. Things like that. But that was early days. Like now.
Yeah, they were the arguments we had, wasn't it, in the beginning?
Yeah, not even really arguments, just sort of like, well, why is that true?
Yeah.
But I think that was even before our project started, really.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I'm so sort of aligned with you.
Yeah. I mean, we really don't. Occasionally, we do bring each other different perspectives.
Yeah.
I'm just interested in what you.
Yeah,
it's not really an argument. It's
right.
just
It's not. We're never really disagreeing. We're just sort of like we're coming at things from a different angle. So it's like so I can bring a perspective on something that you wouldn't have noticed before, and vice versa.
Right. Yeah, and we do have we do come from different kind of perspectives in general, and I think the libertarian thing has kind of shaped a little bit of us as well. It's not
just not being grossed out by libertarians. I think has been turned out to be really helpful, because there's some of the best, kind of like Scott Horton and Dave DeCamp and stuff. There's some of the best anti-war commentators in the U.S.
Exactly,
and we have sort of like and
I would never have looked in that area.
Right. So. No, but I was looking at that and I was like, these guys are great. They have a lot to say about this specific thing. Maybe we don't agree with them on economics or anything, but Dave DeCamp is.
Yeah, can we talk about him?
Oh, he's one of the best. We love him. He's one of the best anti-war voices out there, and in some areas he's doing commentary that no one else is doing. No one else is documenting the movements of the empire the way he is.
Yeah,
as meticulously every detail.
His YouTube summaries have become an essential part of our daily viewing. Haven't they?
We love watching it.
Yeah. I mean, it's very. He keeps a real eye on the movements of the war machine.
He has the same makeup we do. We found out a little while ago.
That's right.
He's got an Australian wife as well.
Yeah, right. So there's kinship there as well. But no, he's fantastic, and you should check him out on YouTube, because it's sorely underwatched.
It is. It's ridiculously underwatched. I think that it's only a matter of time before people start really looking at him as a source of authority and just someone with the finger on the pulse, because he just documents everything, even stuff that's not that interesting. If it's a news story that has to do with the behaviors of the U.S. war machine, he writes it all out.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic. And he also scratches that itch that, I used to love watching the news a long time ago. And sitting down watching him is like watching the news, isn't it?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
it's got that same kind of vibe.
Yeah, it's
I'm
just-
such a nerd, though. Not many people love watching the news, but I grew up in a journalism family. Like,
Yeah.
the news was the most exciting part of our day.
Right. Yeah. And now you get to do that without being propagandized.
Right, yes. Yeah, without that yucky feeling of like, what are you not saying about this?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, next question.
Ed McKean asks, what are the ways that people deeply attached to the status quo, even whilst recognizing it stinks, can be encouraged to let go their grip?
Okay, that's a really deep question.
Yeah, but it's also kind of like that's sort of what we grapple with every day. Like that's sort of what our whole project is about.
Yeah.
Kind of like it's about opening eyes. It's about getting people who are right on the cusp
Of just,
to snap their eyes open. That's sort of where it's at. And it is the ones who are most primed for like a real realization, a real eye opening are the ones who are sort of attached to the status quo, but recognize that it sucks. Like they're not, the ones who are really married to the status quo and are deeply invested in explaining why it's fine, like really rich people,
Yeah.
are not really, they're not going to be susceptible to pointing to things like Gaza or whatever.
We call them the bonies.
Yeah. It was spoiler alert for the movie Warm Bodies. If you ever want to watch the movie Warm Bodies, but you don't want to know how it ends, don't listen to the next few seconds. But in the movie Warm Bodies, everyone's turning into they got a zombie. It's a zombie movie, and everyone's being turned into zombies. But they figured out, and if you're a zombie for a long enough time, you turn into what they call a bony, which is like the flesh is all falling off, and they're like these evil skeletons, and they kill you and stuff. But they figured out that the zombies can be loved back into humanness, but the bonies can't. They're too far gone.
Right. And it's become part of our lexicon, hasn't it? Like,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, too far gone, can't be saved. So we just focus on the ones who can. The real aggressive Zionists are the ones we've just been blocking lately. It's just
Right, yeah.
If your bio says proud Zionist, just bye. That's not okay to be. It's not an okay thing. It's like saying proud pedophile. Fuck off. You're beyond redemption.
Right, yeah. But, a lot of people are just kind of like looking at this, particularly at what's happening in Gaza and going, shit, that is awful.
Yeah, so what you can do and what we try to do is expand consciousness, expand awareness of what's happening. We say this over and over and over again in article after article, but it's like all healthy movements in humanity, all movements toward health begin with an expansion of awareness. You have to recognize that there's a problem and recognize that the problem is undesirable. And then from there, you can begin working toward health. And that's true whether you're talking about, problems in the macro, where you're talking about humanity as a great collective, like realizing that racism is wrong, for example. There's our collective understanding. Enough awareness was spread through activism, through writing, through journalism, that racism is this harmful force in our society and is undesirable and not conducive to a conscious and well-functioning society. So we got rid of it, or we haven't gotten rid of it. We got rid of the belief that it's fine,
Right.
and now it's something that people sort of have to keep secret or
Do in other ways.
be fringy about it or whatever. But yeah, so as a collective, it works that way. But also, like as an individual, you're not going to kick a drug addiction problem unless there's an expansion of awareness. Unless you realize that you have a problem and that it needs to end, you have to become really conscious of that. And you're really not going to get a handle on your addiction until you find out what inside you has been driving it.
Right.
Where's that pain coming from? Where's that trauma or whatever, and bring that into consciousness and heal that.
That's why I love, the fact that Gabor Mate is,
How lucky has that been? Him and Aaron.
Yeah.
These twin, he's talking about the individual
addiction, but it is very related to how we, we do have an addiction to the status quo.
And just how it's all trauma based and everything. And it's sort of like both him and his son are talking about different aspects of the same thing.
Yeah, the internal and the external version of it.
But that's what you can do. Just keep pointing to, just try to expand awareness. Keep showing people over and over and over again. This is happening. This is why it's happening. This is who's doing it. This is what it looks like.
Right.
This is why it's bad. This is how horrifying it is to fight that desensitization.
And, and expand your own consciousness as well. I'm convinced that that's really all you really need to do, is to make sure that you understand it from every angle, and that you can, understand it to the point where you can talk about it, fluently and without any kind of like wobble on it. You'd see it like you'd be able to explain the back of your own hand. And that way, then when people talk to you about it, you can talk about it in normal terms, and they too will see what you're seeing.
Normal terms, as opposed to like using a bunch of esoteric jargon, a bunch of borrowed concepts and stuff. Yeah,
you really need to get beyond that and work out what you're seeing in your own words for yourself, which does require, a lot of, I wouldn't say study, but examination.
Getting real with yourself, doing a lot of inner work.
Yeah, and seeing how it operates in you. We've grown up in the empire. It is normal for us. We have normalized empire thinking in our brains.
It's like water for fish.
Yeah, and so find that in yourself as well. Get real about the fact that you're not separate from it. We're a part of it. We're all a part of it, and those internal epiphanies about how you're a part of it are gold, aren't they? Like that's really where you can explain the machinations of the empire from a very personal perspective, because you know it. You've seen it inside you. You know how you have been abused and can be abusive, etc.
And that understanding of how your own inner mechanisms relate to how all these inner dynamics relate to the outer dynamics and that we see in the outer world. That's what gives you a authority to talk about. You can speak from your own authority and in normal terms, instead of having to say, well, Marx says da 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 da, or Bernie says da 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 da. You can just talk about it from your own perspective, from where you're seeing things.
Which is probably, an unseen aspect of our thing, is that we spend heaps of time on internal work.
Yeah, I mean, that was how we connected, and we'd both been spending years and years doing inner work and completely ignoring politics.
Yeah. And then that hasn't stopped. Like we both spend, hours each day doing that. So as well as the writing, etc.
Yeah, and they both complement each other. Your inner work will complement your ability to expand awareness of the malfeasance of the empire, and also expanding your awareness of the malfeasance of the empire will get you looking inward and asking questions about yourself. We've been doing so much inner work about what's been happening with Gaza and everything. It just dances with all these things within us.
Yeah.
It brings a lot of stuff out. So yeah, in answer to Ed McKean's question, just expand consciousness inwardly and outwardly, I think, is the answer.
Right.
Daniel Victor asks, do you ever tweet anything that isn't anti-Israel or anti-USA? I mean, like a normal person?
Okay, Daniel. Okay. Yeah, that's exactly what the world needs, is another white Western woman talking about how bad Russia and China are.
Yeah, there's
such a dearth of people like that.
You definitely ought to be tweeting the things that any Westerner can see by turning any television on to any channel and waiting a few minutes.
What is it about that? Like, I get that all the time. All the time.
I think it's just what they're used to. Like, everything in their echo chamber is telling them, no. The normal thing is to be talking about how bad Russia is, how bad China is, how bad Iran is, how bad North Korea is, et cetera, et cetera. You're not. So what are you doing talking about this perfectly innocuous and fine country? It's weird and freakish.
Yeah.
But the thing that makes it look weird and freakish is because they're saturated in propaganda all day, and they're not used to having the power structure that they live under criticized.
It's so bizarre to me. Like, it is like, what? I don't live in Russia. I don't live in China. I can't do anything about that. I live in the Western Empire. I'm going to criticize my own empire. It just reminds me of those people, those kinds of people who go around, blaming everyone for their own problems when they are clearly the common denominator in those problems.
Right.
Like, yeah, have a bit of fucking reflection, Daniel. Like, we can only change ourselves. That's primarily my response to that. My secondary response to that is that we are by far worse than any of those countries. Far, far worse. Just in this century, we have killed millions, displaced many more millions. We are the only one who keep consistently launching wars and all over bullshit. None of this is needed or real.
Yeah, it's not just the power structure we live under. It's also by far the worst. By far. Like, everyone in the world should be criticizing the U.S. empire and its allies.
Yes, everyone inside and outside of it. But the fact that we live fucking inside the empire, and it is our responsibility, it is our democratic responsibility to keep a check on this fucking thing, on this murderous thing that is being done in our name. Of course, this should be our absolute focus on every level. So, yeah, yes.
Can you think of anything more sycophantic and bootlicking and just gross?
Yeah.
Than pointing your finger. It's like someone living in Nazi Germany shaking their fists at some other country.
Yeah.
Oh, they're so bad. They're such imperialists.
Yeah. Well, have you heard of Burma?
It's like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
You pathetic loser.
I mean, yeah. And I know that the word whataboutism has been malformed into all sorts of it doesn't actually mean what it means anymore. But that is actually a classic whataboutism. He's saying, you are trying to point to this very real thing that I myself, am a part of, and you yourself has a say in. But what about that country over there?
Right.
That's the definition of it. And then they've, of course, in the way that everything is twisted around into a projection, whataboutism, you'll get that all the time for just trying to point out the empire that you live in sins.
Yeah, it's a whataboutism because the real conversation to be having is, what is the worst country in the world doing? What is the worst power structure in the world doing? Who is the murderous asshole that is happening? If there's, if you were in a room and there was one guy in the room punching everybody and stealing their wallets, that's the guy you should be talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, yeah, well, that other guy over there, he looked at a girl who's not his wife. That's not the thing right now, man. That's a whataboutism. Shut up.
Yeah, that's right. I saw him steal a song from the jukebox. Yeah, fuck off.
We're talking about the main thing here.
If you're the arsehole, you should change yourself.
Right.
But also, another thing that we've found, there are so many levels to this. We really are the fucking problem. It goes so deep. Every time people come up with another whataboutism, like 4 months ago, everyone was saying, well, why are you focusing on Israel? Well, that seems a little suspicious, doesn't it? And then they would bring up things like Yemen. Or
oh, yeah, they would be like, why are you talking about Israel and not Yemen? There was a genocide there. Who was behind it, you prick?
Yeah.
Did you know there was a war in Syria? Did you say anything about that? Who was behind that?
Yeah. I saw that pop up, and then one of the higher ups said, yeah, let's stop that line.
Let's stop drawing attention to that. Let's stop drawing attention to Yemen, especially now that we're bombing Yemen again.
That's not
the
country
get well
we
fucking destroyed. And also, I think that question is born, in our particular case, is born from not really understanding Australia's relationship with Washington.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Well, yes. And I mean, that did take me a while to unpick how closely related we are. We are just basically the lapdog. We are the basement gimp of Washington, D.C.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen that years ago with just how deferential Australia has been about Assange.
Right.
Its own journalist.
Its own journalist has, and we've had zero things to say about it other than, oh, it's not really our business.
It's not really our business.
It's not our business. It's our fucking
If our
citizen.
buddy wants to persecute an Australian journalist.
Yeah, well, we have to say about that.
Yeah. No, when China had arrested that Chinese Australian journalist for espionage, which probably was involved in.
Yeah.
There was an immediate humanitarian concern. There's immediately every Australian official was talking about, oh, this needs to stop. This is unacceptable.
Right, yeah.
But not with their guy who actually didn't do anything and is being persecuted by their buddy.
Talking of which, so we're a few weeks out now from the final stage of the extradition trial. Most probably the final stage. I think there is some chance that it can be taken to a European court or something like that. But most likely we will have, over the course of 2 days, I think it's the 21st and the 22nd of Feb.
20th and 21st, maybe 21st and 22nd for us. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
But yeah, in London it's the 20th and the 21st.
So all eyes should be on that. And so Australia, we are inextricably linked with the US empire. And often, when all other allies fall away, Australia will still be there, kicking at the shins of G or whatever. Right. With absolutely no benefit to ourselves whatsoever. And there's a wonderful video, John Mearsheimer, that I try and put out there as much as possible because I think it's so enlightening about, because he talks from an American perspective about why Australia will be with the US and why it's not in our prosperity interests, but it is in our security interests. And security will always trump prosperity because you cannot be prosperous if, you're being bombed all the time, etc.
Yeah, and the reason it's not in Australia's security interests is because America will attack Australia. It will become an enemy.
Right.
He says
he reveals it beautifully too. It's just like an episode of The Sopranos.
Yeah. He's like, if you go with China and you side with China, then you need to understand that you are our enemy. Yeah. And if you're our enemy, you do not want to find out how nasty we can be. Just ask Fidel Castro.
That is perfect.
I've watched it so many times.
I know, we watched it heaps.
We put it out there so many times.
Yeah. But that's exactly where we're at. Like, there really is that we don't have a lot of choice. It's a non-consensual relationship with the US.
That's the thing we keep saying. Like, Australia doesn't side against China with the US in order to protect itself from China. Australia sides with the U.S. to protect itself from the U.S.
Right, yeah. Because it absolutely isn't in our interest to put ourselves at the front line of a war with China.
No, but we'd rather fight China than the U.S. apparently.
Apparently.
Rather than become an enemy of the most tyrannical power structure. And that's just sort of this unspoken premise behind all Australian foreign policy these days.
And when you can see now, it is just right out there in the open how you do not want to be enemies with the US.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they can make life very, very, very fucking painful.
Yeah, and there's not really any restrictions. There's nothing they won't do, basically. If you get in their way, they'll back a literal genocide if it's in their if it's in their interests to do that.
And they act with impunity. So there's really, there doesn't appear to be any kind of like overarching body, like even the ICJ has been completely ignored in all of this. So.
Yeah, well, that's why the imperialists are always the empire managers are always talking about the rules-based international order instead of international law. International law is actually written down, and you can see it, and you can point to the things, and you can say this is what the international laws are, whereas rules-based international order is just sort of this nebulous, unspoken thing where basically it just means the United States gets everything at once and no one gets to do anything about it.
Yeah, it reminds me of abusive parents, that just basically like, what I say goes, and, there's no rhyme or reason, just don't question. It's, domination, Another question?
Honesty Revolution asks, who do you support for president? RFK Jr. wants to reduce military spending and close 90% of bases. Why aren't you screaming on the rooftops for him?
Oh, God.
This is every 4 years. Who do you want for president? Who do you want for president?
Haven't we not got to the point now where we all know that it doesn't matter?
All the bullshit we're seeing now with Biden was Trump paved the way for it.
Yeah, it's just like hand over hand. It's,
and everything Trump did was paved for by Obama. It's just the empire does what it does, and then there's a different face on the logo. Like it has a different mascot for 4 or 8 years.
Yeah, and they're given a kind of like busy box of tools for them to kind of play with and pretend that they're doing something, but like.
Yeah, it's like the little toy steering wheel. Right. Maggie and the Maggie Simpson in the theme song for The Simpsons. Like she thinks she's driving the car.
Yeah.
She ain't driving a car. That's a toy. That's what voting is.
Yeah.
That's what in the U.S. empire.
Or when you give your little brother the Wii that isn't attached to the console. Like,
right. It's just so he'll stop whining and asking for a turn.
Yeah. That is voting.
He's playing.
Yeah, and so, I do get the impression Biden, somewhere deep in that frazzled brain is enjoying this.
He's a horrible person. He was
such a hawk.
Actually,
anyway.
kind of worse before he got dementia.
Yeah. He turned into
you see those video clips of him. He's just a horrifying nightmare of a man.
Right. Yeah. No. And I think that guy still exists deep in that addled soup of a brain.
Yeah. People are coming up to him and being like, "Grandpa, did you know we're still bombing the Palestinians?" Gets a smile out of him.
Yeah.
That is a sick fuck. But you have to be a sick fuck to become the president. There's people that are in the running that seem like way better than Biden, but they'll never get anywhere near it.
Right.
Cornel West, we love him. He's a lovely guy. He's
beautiful.
He's not perfect, but infinitely better than Biden. Jill Stein, she's great.
Yeah.
But they have as much chance of getting in as I do, and I'm not even running.
I mean, the whole system is rigged against them. When you find out about, who's allowed to vote and then where they're allowed to vote and what ballots you're meant to be on, and it's very complicated, rigged just for two parties.
Yeah, it's rigged to be a two-party system, and nobody gets to be in those two parties unless there's a horrible ghoul of a person.
Yeah, and I think the Bernie Sanders campaign convinced everyone of that, anyone who was watching.
Yeah, there's not really any valid reason to believe that you can vote your way into the end of the empire.
The
empire will never allow you to vote for the end of the empire.
Yeah.
That's not on the ballot.
But imagine Jill Stein does get to sit in the Oval Office. Do you think that she would be able to do anything?
I think she would be assassinated immediately. What choice would they have?
Well, I mean, the only thing that I think the only power I think you have up there is the bully pulpit, the ability to change the narrative.
You have unlimited authority to start wars. There's no inertia on that.
Yeah.
You could decide that you want to nuke Uganda. You'll have lots of support for whatever. So just whatever silly nonsense you want to do.
Oh, well, we found out during that ICJ thing that Uganda's actually a very, very...
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah, they really...
Yeah, Uganda, the Ugandan judge, there was a panel of 13 judges? Or
I think it's 15 and then two, one Israeli, one
altogether.
South African.
Yeah. And the only judge, including the Israeli judge, the only judge that voted with Israel every single time was Ugandan, not Israeli. Ugandan. The Israeli one was mostly pro-Israel.
Yeah.
But the Ugandan one was the only one that was pro-Israel on every single issue.
More Israeli than Israeli.
Yeah, more pro-US than US. The US didn't vote with Israel every time either.
Right, yeah. So that would be quite a shock if we bombed them.
Yeah, that's true. That's a bad example.
But
there would probably be some resistance
keep
to
everyone
that.
on their toes. I don't know. A little bit of chaos.
Yeah. But yeah, let me rephrase that. There's no inertia to any sort of military action against an enemy of the U.S. empire. That really, they'll let you start any wars, and then they'll throw all this inertia on ending them.
Right. Yeah. Maybe one more question.
No, there's another.
Right.
There's a second part to that question. It was
Okay.
RFK Jr. wants to reduce military spending and close 90% of bases. Why aren't you screaming from the rooftops for him?
Okay. RFK.
I mean, he's probably better than Trump or Biden, but that is not.
That's a very low bar.
That is not.
The bar is on the floor.
No, I don't know. Is he even the fact that he will not stand against Israel at all kind of makes me think he's full of shit about everything else too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was very revealing.
Yeah, he's really deferential to Israel, like extremely so. There was that interview he did with Dave Smith the other day where Smith asked him if he had any concerns about Israeli influence in U.S. politics. And there was, I'm not exaggerating, a 7-second pause.
You counted it, didn't you?
Yeah, he stared and blinked for 7 seconds before answering and delivering a non-answer, like politicians speak non-answer. Like, just if he had any concerns about Israeli influence in U.S. politics, even members of the squad, even Bernie Sanders will tell you, yeah, I have some concerns, but or whatever. They'll say there's concerns, but then they'll say, but Israel has a right to defend itself. But he couldn't even say that. Like, he's way far away from being able to have any sort of real position on Israel. And if you can't have a real position on Israel, that means you don't have a real position on Iran. That means you don't have a real position on Palestine. That means you don't have a real position on any of those other Syria or any of those other countries that Israel is in a nonstop state of war with.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It was very telling, that 7-second pause. But just, I don't know, man. Being a Kennedy, that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, my first thought was, I just think the images that are rolling through his head right now are, his uncle's brain being blown. Like, it's a fairly...
Every minute that goes by where your brain isn't on the hood of your car is a blessing.
Exactly. It's such a thing. So, yeah, I find that all very fascinating, but I'm not interested. I'm just generally not interested in presidential elections. I feel like they are used to distract everyone from real issues and from the way that real change is made.
Yeah, I think those people out there protesting in pro-Palestine protests and blocking ships full of weapons
and boycotting,
them TikTok kids protesting against what Israel is doing are having a much more meaningful impact in expanding consciousness and sowing the seeds for revolution and bringing about the revolutionary change that we so deeply need than anyone talking about any kind of election.
Right. Yeah. No, I think elections are very they're helpful to the status quo because they, it's a lot of parades and, speeches, and we can all talk about it, but it's meaningless fluff. It doesn't actually make any meaningful difference in the,
Yeah, if you would be a threat to the empire, you don't get elected. That's the thing. So that dynamic right there just makes it not really worthy of attention. So we do kind of tune out. The only time we ever really pay attention to who's getting elected and who the president is to draw attention to the fact that it doesn't fucking matter.
Right.
Like we're hammering Biden really hard right now to show everyone, look, they told you that if Trump was elected, there would be all this, racism and genocide and horrors unfolded. And that's exactly what's happening under Biden.
Right, yeah.
Like the worst case most drama queen thing you could imagine that people were saying about Trump, Biden is actually doing. And Trump never did in his 4 years.
Right, yeah. And then when Trump was around, we were always, because everyone had this delusion that he was some sort of anti-war president. So.
Yeah, even as he was just bombing the Middle East and assassinating Iranian generals and starving Venezuelans and Yemenis and stuff. He was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Arresting Assange.
Yeah, exactly. And so all of that needed pointing out. But that was as far as our interest went.
Right, and dispelling the illusions. That's our whole thing, is just trying to bring about clear seeing, because clear seeing, becoming a truth-based society is what will save our species. Is the expansion of consciousness, the expansion of truth, the expansion of understanding.
Last question.
Okay, so this is a very Caitlin-y question. Adam Gibbard asks, what kind of world should we strive for? Skipping the how part, what kind of world should we strive for?
Oh, I fucking love questions like that.
Yeah, you do.
I do.
That's your whole thing, really.
Yeah. I think the type of world I want to see is more collaboration-based, more creativity-based, intuition-based, insight-based, where we can create things without the profit motive getting a word in edgewise. And I think that competitive mindset that we have, you know, particularly as Western people, like all the way through every system and all the way through our very programming, our internal programming, I would love to see that gotten rid of and that people became more playful in their collaborations with each other, less competitive. I would really love to see everyone have their own home. I want to see them have clean water and all the resources that they need to enjoy their life, and for them to be able to choose what they want to do to contribute to society. And I truly believe that healthy people have a drive to contribute to society and a drive to create and a drive to make things and to be useful. And I think when you're unhealthy, you need time to get health back together. You need time to rest. You need time outside of those systems, those competitive systems. You need to be reassured that your existence is enough in order to get back to a healthy state of being. I would love to see systems in place that helped people have that time to sort through their own internal bullshit and come to a place where they can feel healthy and happy and creative and contribute. Yeah. And so, but they're just kind of like, you know, my own, I really do think it's important that people have their own vision of what is a better future. And I think that's where we really suffer. We're so inundated with dystopian fiction from every angle. We've been, you know, taught, like brainwashed, basically. We're given these images of like the end of days through all of our culture. And we've been given very, very few images of what it's like to live in a peaceful world. And I find it a very instructive meditation to go deep and work out what that looks like for myself on a personal basis. And I really encourage anyone listening to just do that. Just work out what would a beautiful, healthy life look like for you, ideally. You know, it's kind of like going to IKEA and getting a box and with no picture of what it looks like when you've built it. We've got all that we need here. We've got the Allen key, we've got the screws, we've got everything that we need to create a beautiful, healthy society, but we don't really know what it looks like in the end. So
yeah, I feel like there's a whole shitload of information in that saying it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism.
Right.
Like there's that because it's true. It's very true. But it's a problem that it's true, and it's a problem that should be solved. We can't let that continue. We need to not make it impossible to envision the end of capitalism. We need it to not be possible, to not be impossible anymore, to envision an end of the status quo and a new status quo in which everyone gets what they need and we collaborate toward the good of humanity, because that's where so many of our problems come in. You're always talking about the oceans and stuff, and like there's no profit motive to get the pollution out of the oceans. That's a huge problem,
and that's a massive problem.
It needs to happen, but it's not going to make anyone rich. And as long as all human behavior is driven by the profit motive and driven by competition, it never will happen. So okay, well, our survival depends on getting rid of those systems. Then getting systems in place where you can clean up the oceans. You can, science has suffered so much from this competition-based model because instead of having all the world's best scientific minds collaborating together and sharing information, it's fragmented into this weird thing where there's like all these scientists working on how to blow up human bodies and on all these military for the military, and they all keep it secret from all the other militaries and stuff. And that's where the cutting edge of most technological development happens, is in fucking military bullshit. Yeah. And then everything else is all these, the pharma corporations and all these for-profit companies keeping all their inventions secret, and if it's not secret, it's trademarked and it's ours.
Patent or whatever, and then bought up and shelved. Another thing that's been happening is that people have created inventions, but because they were decentralized power or thing gives power to individuals, like, say someone came up with a free energy system that could just sit on the top of your apartment building or your flat or whatever, and you could just have free energy. There's no money in that, sorry. And also,
that would be shut down by any means necessary.
Right. If you could buy it, install it, and that was it, that's like the antithesis of capitalism. That is not a good business model. No one's ever going to make any money out of that. And so therefore, those sorts of ideas get patented by, well-meaning people, these amazing minds come up with these things. They get patented and then goes and buys that patent and puts it in a drawer, and that's the end of that. And because, they don't want any competition. They don't want that. They want to own the means of production. So, yeah, and that's very important, and it needs to be centralized.
Yeah, just that thought experiment of what would happen if someone invented the perfect energy system. It would not be allowed to exist.
No, we would never hear about it.
That shows you that we live in a profoundly dysfunctional system that needs to change, and is a huge inhibition to human development and human thriving.
I think you came up with a metaphor we used a long time ago, which I love though. It's like having the profit motive, oversee everything is just like deciding that everything needs to be made out of wood.
Right. We would get really good at woodcraft.
Yeah, really, really good.
We would maybe be able to do some things with wood that we can't do with wood right now.
Yeah, but there's plenty of things that we couldn't do.
Right. It would be much, much worse. And then, it's just this silly, arbitrary limit that we've placed upon our species, and it's going to kill us.
It's like deciding that we're going to play Monopoly and it's life or death, and then that's that. You're not allowed to not play Monopoly. You get born into this world.
Anyone who decides they don't want to play Monopoly is just not doesn't get to live.
And Monopoly's a boring fucking game. I'm sorry. It's awful.
It's not good.
I hate it. It just bores the shit out of me. And it always ends in the same way, that some arsehole gets everything. And
some kid cries.
Yeah, and that's where we're at. We're at the some arsehole gets everything phase of the Monopoly game that we've all been forced to play non-consensually.
Just look around. Just look around at our world right now. Are you really sure that this is the best it can be? Do you really believe that this is what sanity looks like? That this is what healthy functioning? Of course not.
Well, because I just don't think money values the right things anyway.
No.
When you look at the people who are adding the most value to the world, they very rarely get any money at all. And I think the COVID lockdowns showed that the essential workers, and we put that word on it because they were essential, the essential workers were basically minimum wages. And they had to go to work or else things would not function.
Yeah, they were keeping the gears of civilization turning.
Yeah, and guess how much money they get for that?
Right.
Zero money. Basic, not even living wage anymore. But you put a branding on some secretion from some animal, in a forest and you destroy that forest and you eradicate that animal.
You become a billionaire. Yeah. No, actually you become a millionaire. You become a billionaire by becoming a middleman.
Right. Oh, the middlemen do so well. I mean,
getting that distributed.
Yeah. If you can work out how to use people's energy and plug it into something else and do as little as possible for yourself, that's how you make big money. That's what money encourages. It encourages
exploitation.
It encourages exploitation
because exploitation is profitable, and anything in a system where all human behavior is driven by the profit motive on a collective level, then as long as something remains profitable, it's going to continue. As long as exploitation is profitable, you will see exploitation. As long as war is profitable, you will see war. As long as ecocide is profitable, you will see ecocide. There's no getting out of these things that are going to kill us, going to drive us to extinction with absolute certainty if you don't end that.
Yeah. there's no stop on that. So yeah, and even with the so-called like green revolution, we're still mining these incredibly rare minerals, and there's so much environmental degradation from that. And coups. Bolivia went through a bloody coup because of its lithium deposits.
And there's still no indication that any of those for-profit green energy systems are going to be able to pull us out. I mean, we're still using copious amounts of fossil fuels and everything. In addition to all that stuff, we're just burning through all this energy and destroying the environment and not actually stopping.
Not stopping,
We need to stop.
A lot of what we need to do is just stop.
Yeah,
and stop being stupid. Stop being crazy. Stop moving one bit of paper from one side of the table to the other side. It's not even like on a table anymore. Ones and zeros to another place of ones and zeros. And we have whole teams of people. Whole teams. I mean, one of the most employable jobs you can have now is marketing.
Right.
Convincing people that they need something that they don't need.
Right.
That's your whole job. Imagine a world where you didn't have to do that. In fact, that was frowned upon. Like, don't do that. Don't make people buy landfill.
Well, imagine a world without manipulation. Imagine a world where that wasn't guided by manipulation and was guided by truth and collaboration instead. Imagine a world where there was no advertising or propaganda.
Yeah, right.
Where it wasn't necessary to convince people to act against their interests.
Yeah.
In order for the economy to survive. In order to keep we have to keep making products, keep product. And not only do you have to keep making products, you have to make more products every year than you made the last year.
Right. It's so insane. It is so insane. And just the way that we've set up the tax system, etc., you have to keep making more money, a little bit more money year after year in order to remain ahead of, to be profitable, just from a mum and pop business perspective.
Yeah, it's all stacked toward growth. And there, the things we want to grow, like, the rainforests.
Yeah.
there's no incentive for that to happen, but there's, Amazon keeps growing or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, the wrong Amazon keeps growing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's been lovely. I really enjoyed this, Tim, actually.
Yeah, this worked so much better than the last time we tried to do it.
Yeah, usually we're like, I don't know. I think
we found our language thing. We didn't really have our speaky words happening for a long time.
For a long time. Yeah.
We're just two traumatized individuals who finally healed enough to be able to get some words out.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, let's do it again.
Cool. Sounds good.
Okay.
Bye, folks.
Bye.